Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, and we will be covering verses 132 to 141. Not to be lost in the ancestral worship, it's about the future. There are a couple of verses on this aspect, and we will go through their details. And these are the references and the excerpts which are quoted here in this presentation are taken from volume 3, The Meanings of the Quran. This is our contact in case there is any question, query, or someone wishes to get in touch with Tolu Islam, they can go through this contact. Outline of today's presentation, that is verses 132 to 141. Follow the model of Ibraheem, who remained firmly on the path of Deen and never wavered from this path till his death. And we know Quran has presented the model of various messengers and other righteous human beings as well, to tell us that whatever they did as human beings, all of us can do as well. He also passed his legacy on to his progeny to pursue the path of Allah. That is another very important point, that while we are learning on this platform and educating ourselves in the system of Deen, we should also share it with our children, and before we leave this world, we should let them know as well. It is just to remind each other, that is important. Then the Quran instructs those who accept Eimaan to follow the footsteps of former messengers of Allah who obeyed the guidance of the revelation, and when the time for their departure from this world arrived, they advised their progeny to remain on the path of Deen. And this means that once they came towards the wahi of Allah, that is the revelation of Allah, and in our case, once we come to the Quran, then we should never give it up and keep it in our consciousness all the time. This serves as guidance for the education and training of our own children. Next, the Quran states an important principle as a permanent value. Tilka ummatun kad khalat laha ma kasabat walakum ma kasabtum wala tusaluna amma kanu ya'malun. And we should remember this reference all the time, not only for our own selves, but also when we talk to others. And the Quran says, do not waste time and energy on indulging in meaningless conversations about past people. Focus on your own conduct and deeds, as you will never be asked what others did. And we will go through the meanings in more detail once we come to later on in the presentation. Addressing the Jews and Christians, the Quran asked them that, was the messenger Ibrahim a Jew or a Christian? He was neither a Jew nor a Christian. He was a Muslim and devoted to the cause of Deen. This is also applicable to the sectarian Muslims of today. Rasulullah was neither Sunni nor Shia. He followed the Quran and achieved the results as noted in it. And this is an important message from today's presentation. Now we go to the first verse of today's presentation, verse 132, the advice to successive generations to continue to obey Deen. وَوَصَّى بِهَا إِبْرَاهِيمُ بَنِيهِ وَيَعْقُوبُ يَا بَنِيَّ إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَى لَكُمُ الدِّينَ فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. And I have highlighted this part, إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَى لَكُمُ الدِّينَ. Ibrahim himself remained in compliance with his maslak, and maslak means deen, path, approach to life, the pattern of life which we adopt in our life, and the values which we follow, and also emphasized and reiterated to his sons to abide by it as well. In the same way, the forefathers of these Jews, Israel, and we know the title of the messenger Yaqub was Israel as well. Yaqub also reiterated adherence to this maslak and told his progeny that this is that system which Allah has chosen for you. But adhering to this maslak is not some temporary or one-off thing. This should be the pattern of the whole of your life. You will need to obey these laws until your final breath. And that is important, that never give up. Just stay on this path. Next slide is remaining steadfast on the path of Deen. The last part of this verse holds great importance. The physical life of man is dependent on breathing, but this does not mean that if we breathe once or breathe sometimes, then life will be maintained through doing this. This is an unceasing action for the whole of life and a continual practice. The moment this is cut off, life comes to an end. As with physical life, the state of man's human life is also like this. And this highlighted line is very important, that like our physical life, self also has a life and it should breathe through the values of the Quran. This life-giving practice is not such that whenever it is wished, it can be adopted, and whenever it is wished, it can be abandoned. This has to be embraced on a continual basis. For this, steadfastness is a precondition. An important point over here, which we have gone over previously as well, that the life of the self is in acquiring new life using the Quranic value system. And once we have acquired that life, then we should breathe through the Quran. And that is an important aspect, that it should become part of ourself, that we should never give up the Quranic value system, because the moment we give it up, we literally are dead as far as this world is concerned. And of course, if we have a dead self, we have no life in the hereafter. Those who have acknowledged and proclaimed this reality that our Rabb is only Allah, and then stood firm on this acknowledgement and proclamation, the Malaika, which is the universal forces, descend on them. It's worth having look on this verse in a complete form, and also look at 46:13. This is what is meant by being a Muslim for the whole of life. After this, the Quran addresses the Jews indirectly and states that this was the maslak of your forefathers. Contrary to this, you are sitting glued to this belief that you will receive all the delights of the world and the prosperities of the hereafter merely because you are the progeny of those chosen beings. And we can see this. For example, the Zionist lobby in Israel thinks that they are chosen people. Actually, human beings, when they want to do wrong, they use those kind of arguments, religious arguments, which have no basis. And the Quran tells us that what is the truth, what is haqq. And what is given in the Quran is haqq. And if we look through the Quranic lens, we can see batil very clearly. This belief is absolutely batil, for which you do not have any written authority. Next verse, 133, the advice of a mu'min to his progeny. Am kuntum shuhada'a iz hazara Yaqub al-mautu iz qala li banihi ma ta'buduna min ba'di qalu na'budu ilahaka wa ilaha abaika Ibrahima wa Ismaila wa Ishaqa ilahan wahidan wa nahnu lahu muslimun. Do you know what your supreme ancestor Yaqub, due to whose title of Israel you call yourselves Bani Israel, advised to his progeny at the time of his death? If you do not know, then come, we shall inform you. He had asked them that after me, whose rule will you accept? And this is in a question form. In reply, they had said that we will obey the laws of that same Allah whom our forefathers, Ibraheem, Ismail, Ishaq, have continued to obey, and whose rule you yourself had accepted. He is the only one, such sovereign obedience to whom is the cause for human eminence. We will bow down our heads in front of his laws, and in this way strengthen this system which they had established. A great lesson for us to follow. After this verse, it is stated in the next verse, 134, the law of requital explained, advice provided on conserving human efforts and energies. Tilka ummatun qad khalat laha ma kasabat wala kumma kasabtum wala tusaluna amma kanu ya'malun. These were the forefathers of these Jews, among whom everyone spent their life according to the divine law. Now they are those who, in opposition to them, have assumed that just by being their progeny, they will benefit from all prosperities of life which they acquired due to their balanced deeds. And it is very difficult in the religious domain, when people are irrational, they never question the belief system they inherit from their ancestors. And this is what the Quran is telling here, that you should give up those false belief systems which are making you suffer in this life. Say to them that the outcomes of deeds are everyone's own. In these, the question of legacy does not even arise. Whatever they did, its fruits and blessings fell into their share. And this is justice, that the system of accountability is such that whatever we do, we are accountable for that, and forefathers and our past does not come into it. Whatever you do, its outcome will be achieved by you. You will be questioned about your deeds. It will not be questioned that what kinds of deeds were those of your forefathers. So it's a pure, brilliant justice. Once we understand the functioning of the law of requital at human self's level, we can very clearly see the truth of our own existence and our own creation in this world. Next slide is everyone's deeds are their own. And it's a great blessing that the way system is functioning, that I am only responsible for my deeds. I am not responsible for the deeds of others. It was said to the Jews that these are your ancestors, every one of whom adopted obedience to the laws of Allah, and in this way they were declared to be deserving of Allah's bounties. But you are those who are sitting back, presuming that merely through being part of their lineage, you will benefit from all those bounties which were received by your forefathers as a result of their righteous deeds. And this happens in the physical domain, that whatever past generations have done, and if they had established a better system, the next generations benefit from that. And if the next generations give it up, then that system collapses and then disappears. And we can see the example of that right in front of us, where one empire is now making full speed efforts to go down. Remember, every individual receives the outcomes of their own deeds. It is not the case that the outcomes of the righteous deeds of a father are acquired by the son in inheritance. Never mind the outcomes of the deeds of forefathers who have passed away centuries ago of any nation, continuing to be passed on to their progeny as inheritance, and for this process to continue till the end of time. And this is the beauty of understanding human self, because at a self's level, we simply cannot pass on anything to anyone else, because self is indivisible. It has its own internal unity and integrity. Absolutely not. This is just complacency and self-deception. Whatever they did, the fruits of those were for them. Whatever you do, the results will belong to you. To assume this is absolutely against the law of requital of Allah. And another point comes from here is that once we acquire that developed self within the values of the Quran, we know our self is developed, because we can check all our thoughts and deeds using the Quranic permanent values. We go to the next slide, the law of the rise and fall of nations. In this illustrious verse, a great fundamental principle is noted about the rise and fall of nations. Every new generation of those nations which are alive, taking the practical assets of their forefathers, takes their established system forward through their own efforts and endeavors. And in this way, through this continuity of effort and striving, by traversing evolutionary stages, continues to advance forward and keeps rising to ever new heights. But when the power of action of some nation becomes paralyzed, then it does not do anything itself, and by repeatedly recounting the glorious exploits of their forefathers and exhibiting pride in these, satisfies itself, i.e., deceives itself, that it is not lagging behind any nation in the world. And another point from here is that if the nation acquires that kind of a power, then if it starts thinking that this power is not going to go away and it will stay like this, doesn't matter how much evil we let loose in the world, then they make a fatal error of judgment. It declares with pride that these nations which today are advancing ahead have taken all this from our forefathers. Today, this is what our state has become when we are told, see to what extent Western nations have progressed in knowledge and skills and in harnessing nature, and how they continue to advance ahead in the trajectory of life, that instead of learning a lesson from this and trying to exit from our wretched state, our response is that if they have progressed to such an extent today, then so what? And we hear this kind of conversation within the Muslim community of today, that they keep taking pride in their ancestors, and while at the same time they themselves are living in a state of Jahim at the present time. Our forefathers had carried out far more investigations and research than them. It is to their investigation and research that they, that is the Western nations of today, owe their development. And with this answer, we appease our ego, whereas the reality of this is nothing more than self-deception. And this is not only true at collective level, it is true at an individual level as well. A lot of families which have wealth and prosperity, their progeny, their children, then squander all that due to their evil actions. We go to the next slide, further elucidation of this verse 134. The second important principle described in this verse is that do not get drawn into trivial bickering about who was greater and who was lesser among your forefathers, who was following truth, that is haq, and who was following wrong, that is batil. We will not even ask of you what it was that they did. And when Quran says we will not ask you, it means that we should look at the law of requital very minutely and see that we are definitely responsible for our own deeds if we look at it from ourselves' point of view. We will ask this, that what did you do? Their deeds are theirs and your deeds are yours. So point over here we should keep in mind is that the way Quran is explaining it, that we should look into it, that how this questioning, how this law of requital functions at the level of ourself. And this is an important point to understand in order to make others understand and make our children understand. But the whole basis on which religion relies is on personalities themselves. That is why all the discussions which take place in it are about forefathers. In fact, in the non-Quranic domain of human thinking, it is only personalities which are discussed. And we can see how much emphasis is being put on certain higher-ups, certain pharaohs of the world, and all the time everyone is engrossed on talking about them, whereas as far as self is concerned, they are ignoring their own self-development, and as a result, wasting very valuable time of our life. It is the utmost effort of every sect to prove that the founder of their sect and his progeny are the most superior and honorable. For the past 1,000 years, we are continuing to remain entangled in these kind of arguments and are contented that we are creating a great impression. There is some kind of a feel-good factor, that emotive impulse and satisfaction we get that I am better than these leaders in the world. But that is not an issue. What Quran is telling us is to look at the issue of self-development right at the fundamental level and hold yourself accountable, because do not waste this valuable time which could be spent on something more positive. And never stop to think that Allah to whose Deen we declare that we are providing a great service, the proclamation of that Allah is, we will not ask anything about these ancestors from you. And that is a great justice. If this declaration of Allah is before us, then all sectarian strife, arguments and debates, disputations and altercations, contentions and wrangling will come to an end. Now we go to the next verse, verse 135, remaining focused on the Deen of Allah. وَقَالُوا كُونُوا هُودًا أَوْ نَصَارَىٰ تَهْتَدُوا قُلْ بَلْ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. They say that you can only receive guidance when you adopt the maslak of these Jews or Christians. And we see these things in the domain of religion. Those who are born Jews or Christians or Muslims, they, without understanding the purpose of their life, for example, Muslims, without understanding the Quran, they try to preach others. Say to them that why don't you give an invitation towards Maslek-e Ibrahimi, that is the Deen of Allah. Ibrahim was neither a Jew nor a Christian. He was purely obedient to Allah's Deen, and he never used to include any non-Allah concept in it. That is, he never did shirk once he accepted Eimaan. Contrary to this, at places you have declared the man-made Shariat as divine commands, and we can see under all religions, everything is mixed up. And as a result, their own psyche is mixed up, and their life is also ruined. And in other places, made the messenger of Allah as God himself. I've used God over here because as opposed to Allah, God has different connotation. Next slide is the meaning of Hanif. This term is used in this verse. In this verse, the attribute of Ibrahim has been noted as being Hanif, and this is the fundamental root and foundation of Deen. The meaning of Hanif are to divert one's attention from all directions and to focus it on one point, one aim, one center. Moving the attention away from every other direction is La ilaha, and to focus it on one center, that is the Deen of Allah, is Illallah. In another place, this has been termed as Kufr bit Taghut and Eimaan billah. Kufr bit Taghut is essential prior to Eimaan billah, i.e., first of all, to turn the face away from every non-Allah concept, ideology, belief, and maslak. And when the slate of human intellect and vision becomes clean in this way, to then imprint the sign of Eimaan billah on it. We have gone through this aspect a number of times before as well, but I thought to reiterate it because it is relevant to this verse 135. If even an iota of non-divine concepts and ideologies remains behind, then this will be shirk. And this is important that we should understand that human psyche, if it is contaminated, then it simply cannot follow the Quran, because then it remains under doubts, suspicions, and creates a lot of psychological issues for itself. That is why Quran says that you should come to terms with your own psyche. And of course, psyche has two parts, conscious and subconscious level, and we should look at it very clearly that what kind of beliefs I am holding on to. So we should replace all those beliefs with the Eimaan and its procedure given in the Quran, and verse 256 of Al-Baqarah is great to understand it. If even an iota of non-Deen concepts and ideologies remains behind, then this will be shirk. In Deen, not even a shadow of shirk remains. In fact, we simply cannot understand Deen to that level if our mind is contaminated with shirk. And establishing Deen will come far later, and a mushrik mind simply cannot establish the system of Deen. It simply cannot get the help of Allah, that is His laws, in getting power in the land. Ibrahim traversed all these stages of Kufr bit Taghut one by one. And when in this way he had turned his face away from all sides, then he proclaimed, having become averse to every non-Allah concept and belief, I consider the focus of my whole attention to be that being alone who has brought the whole universe into existence from nothing. I cannot make anyone a partner in his sovereignty. This is what my maslak is. Let us go to the next verse, 136. The importance of having Eimaan in all Anbiya outlined. That is, all messengers who were Anbiya as well. And the difference between Nabi and messenger, we have gone through it previously. The messengers in a position of Nabi used to receive the revelation, and as a messenger, then that revelation used to be shared with fellow human beings. Qulu amanna billahi wa ma unzila alayna wa ma unzila ila Ibrahima wa Ismaila wa Ishaqa wa Yaquba wal asbati wa ma utiya Musa wa Isa wa ma utiya nabiyuna min rabbihim la nufarriqu bayna ahadim minhum wa nahnu lahu muslimun. Say to them that, come, we will tell you which is that maslak by adopting which we have risen above your parochialism and racism. That maslak, that path is that we accept Eimaan in Allah and have Eimaan in that code of life which He has sent through this messenger towards us. Due to its origin, this is the same kind of code of life which before this was sent down towards Ibraheem, Ishaq, Yaqub, and other Anbiya of Bani Israel. We have conviction in this reality that they too, in their own respective times, had received codes of life from Allah. Furthermore, also to Musa and Isa, rather to all the Anbiya. We consider all these Anbiya as being links in this one process, and from the aspect of being Nabi, we do not differentiate anyone from another. That is, we should keep in mind that the message of Allah at a fundamental level, that is Eimaan and Salih deeds, and the concept of self and hereafter remains consistently the same throughout the times of all human beings as and when the messengers came to them. This is that maslak according to which we purely obey the laws of Allah. We go to the next slide. All messengers accepted Eimaan in the wahi from Allah. And that is an important aspect because they were human beings and whatever was revealed to them, they accepted it after rationally going through it and reasoning it, and then they said that this is for us, we accept it, and then they passed it on to others. And we have to follow the same procedure. It has also been noted that Ibrahim had presented the invitation of Deen to the whole of mankind after moving away from religious sectarianism. There was always some kind of a religion existing in every society, and it was not different with the messenger Ibrahim as well. He was brought up in a certain society in which his own father was the chief priest of that society, but he went against it after he started rationally questioning the belief system of his forefathers. The natural consequence of this invitation or requirement was to accept Eimaan in this reality and to proclaim that all the Anbiya brought Deen and one Deen only from Allah, and that no differentiation could be made in this status of theirs, i.e. Nubuwwat and Risalat. Nubuwwat means receiving the message as Nabi, and Risalat means passing on to fellow human beings as the messenger. Thus it was stated to the Muslim Ummah that the Jews and Christians invite you to their sectarian maslak, you invite towards this maslak, that is Islam. There are two matters in this which are worthy of attention. The first, that what is meant by having Eimaan in the former books. An explanation regarding this has been given in the meanings of the Quran, volume 1, under verse 4. Secondly, that it has been explained in volume 2, under verse 52, that every Nabi had received a book from the direction of Allah. Because the role of messenger cannot be carried out unless one has message. And that message has to be received from Allah as wahi. This is a batil belief that a Rasool used to come with a book and a Nabi without a book. Among those Anbiya, and Anbiya by the way is the plural of Nabi, who are mentioned by name in this verse, the scripture of Ibrahim, the book of Musa, and the book of Isa have been referred to in the Quran. There is no reference to the books of the rest of the Anbiya. But it has been stated that books were also sent down to them, and in verse 136 it is noted comprehensively that all the Anbiya received books. We go to the next verse, 137. Eimaan is only that one which meets the criterion laid down by Allah in the Quran. It's an extremely important verse. Again, if we can remember this reference, that will be useful in the case of passing on to others or discussing with others. فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا وَإِنْ تَوَلُّوا فَإِنَّمَا هُمْ فِي شِقَاقٍ فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Say to them that this is our message. If these people also accept Eimaan in this code of life exactly the way you have accepted it, then at that point they will be on the correct path defined by Allah. And this is a very important point which we have touched upon previously as well. But we should remember that Quran is asking us to accept that Iman which is described within its folds. And once we accept that Iman, a change takes place within our psyche, a noticeable change. And that change comes and tells us that now you are on a different path of life. And as a result of that Iman, then we start doing different deeds, saleh deeds, which Quran says. And as a result are those hidden potentials, the latent potentials start coming out, which simply we could not even identify before accepting Iman. So that is the important point over here, which we should keep in mind. That is why Quran says, فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ, that they have to accept Iman the way you messenger, you companions of messenger have accepted Iman. And if they try to avoid it, then this avoidance of theirs will be equivalent to straying away from that path on which all the former Anbiya have been treading. If they did not adopt this path and remained adamant in their point of view, that is, they are not willing to give up their previous belief system, because of that false belief system, the state of the society had become very bad. That is why there is imbalance in the society, there is injustice in the society. So the Quran is telling them that in order to bring balance and justice the way it is explained in the Quran, you have to change your psyche through this Iman. Then their opposition will continue to be in place, but you should absolutely not be concerned about it. In our system, which you obey, there is enough strength that it will protect you from their harms. This is because it is the system of that Allah who hears and knows. And this is a great phrase over here, فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. That is, once you start following this system after accepting the Iman which is noted down in this book of Allah, then you will see that gradually you will understand that this book will provide you all that kind of protection and security which is required to establish the system of Deen. Great assurance. We go to the next slide, further elaboration of this verse. A great reality is disclosed herein. If these people also accept Iman the way you have accepted Iman, then they are indeed on the right path. In the word, more or less all followers of religion also acknowledge God and the life of the hereafter. But the Quran simply does not accept this Iman of theirs as being Iman. It declares that only Iman which is in accordance with the concept of Allah and the hereafter which Allah Himself has presented in the Quran can truly be called Iman. The meaning of Iman has been clarified in volume 1 under verse 3. This is the very reason that it demands this same kind of Iman from those whom it calls the people of the book as well. An elucidation of this has been covered in volume 1 under verse 1, 1 and 2, 3. And this is important because Allah of the Quran and God of those who do not have Iman of the Quran, they are different. And as a result, Iman acquired through the Quran will have a different impact on ourselves than all those gods which people believe without the Quran. That will have different impact on human self. And we can see all those selves creating all kinds of problems and tyranny in the world. In this connection, it is stated at another place, Ya ayyuhallazina aminu billahi wa rasulihi wal kitabil lazi nazzala ala rasulihi wal kitabil lazi anzala min qablo. I quoted this verse because over here again Quran has said, addressing those who think they have accepted Iman, Quran says, Aminu billahi wa rasulihi wal kitabil lazi, that you have to accept what is revealed in the book of Allah, that is Al-Kitab, that is the Quran. O Jamaat Mu'mineen, accept Iman in Allah and His Messenger because He has brought this message to you and He is following this message according to this book. And if He could follow as a human being, then you can follow too. So for us is that we have to follow the book because the messenger is not now among us. And the book which He has sent to His messenger and the book which He sent to those before. Now we go to next verse 138, drawing attention to the importance of acquiring divine attributes. Sibkat Allahi wa man ahsanu min Allahi sibkatan wa nahnu lahu abidun. Say to them, that is Christians, that salvation and prosperity are not achieved by sprinkling water, that is baptizing children. It is achieved by becoming one colored and harmonious with the divine law as revealed in the Quran. Which color can be more beautiful color than this? Say to them that we have proposed this color for ourselves, i.e., we have adopted obedience to the pure law of Allah. Other than this, we do not acknowledge the rule of anyone else. Great metaphor given in this verse. We go to the next slide, elaborating the meaning and importance of sibkatan. This term is used in this verse. The meaning of sibkat is the technique for dyeing. Then it is started to be used to mean color itself. By calling the Deen of Allah the technique for coloring or the color of Allah, the beauty which with this long and detailed discussion about the core purpose of Deen and its goal and objective are summarized in one word can only be the miracle of the Quran. The goal of Deen and the ultimate objective is the development of the human self. So in relation to human self, this term sibkat is very important. The meaning of the development of the human self is for the divine attributes to become manifested in it within human limits. Or we could say that it can be recognized by seeing to what extent divine attributes are reflected in it. And this aspect is also covered in volume 2, verse 30, under the topic of the human self. I put down all these references because Quran's study from the point of view of establishing system of Deen and developing ourselves is very serious study. So we should go through these parts of these two published volumes, that is volume 1 and volume 2, in order to come to grips with the finer aspects of our own self. This is termed as absolute sincerity, harmony, and alignment with the will of Allah. Just ponder on what a new color does. No matter how many spots there are on a cloth or marks and patterns of different colors, if the new color is deep, then by overcoming all these marks and patterns, it makes this cloth one color, i.e. one color and uniformity. And we have seen that how dyeing of clothes is done and how all the previous color disappears. In other words, when the self develops, then an astonishing kind of uniformity and harmony becomes created in the human character. This is defined as the balanced personality in the terminology of the present era. But for this uniformity and balance, it is essential that the cloth becomes fully immersed in this very color. So human self should adopt this new color provided by the Quran. We go to next slide, reflecting a bit more on this verse. This is why it is stated in another place that, O those who claim to be mu'mineen, enter into the deen of Allah completely. It is this which will be called Tawheed, that is oneness of Allah. Mind only occupied with Allah's concept as given in the Quran as a model, i.e. for the cloth to become one color and for not an iota of another color to remain in it. For this it is necessary that this color should be deep as well as indelible, that it is not washed away with one raindrop. If this color is light, then the previous marks and patterns will only become dimmed, they will not be erased, and if it is not fast, then after a while this new color will fade away, and the former spots and stains will emerge and appear again. This is what happened to us. After the initial era, the color of Deen which we had dyed ourselves in was dull and pale and also not fast. So over here, these distractions and these sometimes doubts and suspicions, these create dent in our Eimaan. And as a result, we might stray away from the Sirat Mustaqim, which is put forward by the Quran. The outcome was that after only a short period of time, under external influences which are spread via an orchestrated conspiracy, that color faded away and all the spots and stains of the pre-Islamic era emerged and reappeared. If our eyes had been open, i.e. if we had used our intellect and vision and the Quranic light had been before us, then we could have seen that Sibqat Allah no longer remained. These are those very marks which we are walking around with clasped to our chests, considering them to be Sibqat Allah, and do not reflect that all these are the colors of other than Allah. And we can see that because Quran over here has put a lot of focus on accepting Eimaan and then following the path put forward by it. We go to the next verse, 139, declaring firm commitment to Allah. Qul atuhajjunana fillahi wa huwa rabbuna wa rabbukum walana amaluna walakum amalukum wa nahnu lahu mukhlisun. They will say that when we already accept God, then why do you give us an invitation to accept Eimaan in Allah? Say to them that come, we will tell you what is the difference between us accepting Allah and your acceptance. You acknowledge that God whose rahmat is confined to lost sheep of Bani Israel, that is in the case of Jews, and we accept that Allah whose rububiyat is for us and you and for the whole of mankind. You accept that God who by taking the atonement of some human being, that is the messenger Isa, forgives the sins of others, and we accept that Allah, according to the law of requital, whom everyone has to face with the consequences of his deeds. So over here there is a horrendous amount of responsibility which we understand through the law of requital of the Quran. In this, neither does the intercession of anyone work, nor does the question of atonement and ransom arise. Now you have understood what is the difference between us and you in the acceptance of Allah. So essentially means that your God is different from that concept of Allah which we are following. After this, if you quarrel with us in this matter, then it is your choice. And by ignoring you and people like you, we adopt obedience to Allah, that is the Rabbil Alameen. We go to the next slide. Understanding the law of requital and its functioning holds the key to understanding the Deen of Allah. The second difference is that you do not have Eimaan in the law of requital of Allah. The Jews say that they can do whatever their hearts desire. Jannat has been reserved for them. And same kind of concept exists within all versions of sectarian Islam. And that is the reason that they are quite satisfied with the ritualistic versions and never come to the Quran and just pay lip service to the Quran. And it is the belief of the Christians that by laying down his life, Isa has atoned for their sins. And this is again discussed in volume 2 under verse 48. But we believe that every individual is himself responsible for his deeds and their results will definitely appear before him. A great statement and declaration through the lips of a mu'min. Leaving aside other issues, observe how great the difference is between your belief and our belief in these two fundamental pillars of Deen, which is Eimaan in Allah and Eimaan in the hereafter. There is also another meaning of our deeds are for us and your deeds are for you. In volume 2 under verse 40, 3 methods have been discussed to understand the Quran. The first of these techniques is explanation and understanding according to knowledge and vision. The second technique is empiricism, i.e., by establishing the Quranic system in a practical form to present its outcomes as evidence and proof of the truth of its claim. And that is where it is important for us that when we explain Eimaan to others, we should also explain the seriousness of not accepting Eimaan and telling others that this life is a one-way street and you are never going to come back. The second technique is that you continue working on your program. Let me act on my program. The outcomes will themselves make clear which system is based on truth. Also at this place, attention is drawn towards this same technique when it is said that despite such clear reasonings, you are intransigent in your position. Then continue on your program. Let us act on our program. The results will themselves demonstrate who is truthful and who is a liar. We will act solely on our program. To get this kind of a conviction, it is very important that we should fully understand Eimaan, then get it into our hearts and mind, and then as a result of that, start doing solid deeds, we will see that we will get this conviction which is noted over here. We go to the next verse, 140. In the pursuit of Deen, all matters need to be referred back to the Book of Allah. This is bound to succeed. Am taquluna inna Ibrahima wa Ismaila wa Ishaqa wa Yaquba wa lasbata kanu hudan aw nasara. Qul antum alamu amillahu wa man azlamu mimman katama shahadatan indahu min Allah. وَمَاللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ أَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. Even after this elucidation, if these people are firmly adamant in their belief, whether Ibrahim, Ismail, Ishaq, Yaqub, and other Anbiya of Bani Israel were Jews or Christians, then say to them that whatever we state, it is because of the knowledge of Wahi received from Allah. Hence, you tell whether you can understand knowledge of the reality or of Allah. The fact is that you know this matter quite well and then deliberately resort to false projection. But just reflect that the person who veils the truth which he has received from Allah, who can be more unjust than him? And they are doing injustice to themselves, because this is the only chance we have to mend our ways, to think rationally, and then get the benefits of following this path. But you can hide these things from us, cannot hide from Allah. He is aware of each and every movement of yours. Now we go to the next verse, and then what I've done is I've covered both of these verses in following slides. Verse 141, reminding about thoughts and deeds. In fact, this is the same verse which we went through in 134. Tilka ummatun qad khalat laha ma kasabat wala kumma kasabtum wala tusaluna amma kanu ya'malun. All the same, despite this, if you insist that your forefathers were not like this, were something else, then what difference does it make to the original issue? Whatever they were, their deeds were for them and your deeds are for you. You will not be asked on what paths your forefathers used to tread and how they used to work. You will be asked what kinds of tasks you accomplished. This is the essence of Deen, in which there is no scope for any squabble. And it's important that before coming to the Quran, whatever we have done in our past life, we should compare the two views or two different kinds of psyches which we possessed. And as a result of that, we will get a good perspective and we can explain it to others. The Quran is also guiding us at an individual level and asking us to be fully aware of not wasting time on meaningless conversations, activities, and instead spend time in pursuing those objectives which contribute towards the establishment of the system of Deen. Because time is very important. When we look at it from Quran's point of view, time becomes extremely important. That is why day and night have been created, to make us realize that your physical life is finite. And you should make maximum effort to develop yourself to that level where you become eligible for the system of Deen. And if Deen is not established here, at least you will be eligible for that system of Deen which is already established in the life of the hereafter. For example, in this verse, Quran says, وَتَعَوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. And we can see that there is a lot of cooperation taking place between ithm and udwan in the word. Help you one another in bir, and bir at a narrow level, at a lower level means righteousness, but at a higher level it means completely coming to terms with our own psyche and the system of Deen, and expand our consciousness to that level where we fully understand the system of Deen as given in the Quran. And taqwa, which I put down over here, the self-development, and we know taqwa means to restrain ourselves, to avoid the pitfalls of life. Because, for example, in a man-made system, there are a lot of pitfalls of life. Quran helps us to identify those and then to avoid those, and as a result do a lot of self-development. But help you not in ithm, I have put down here crime, but ithm means, normally it is translated as sin, whereas Itham means that those latent potentials which are within us, we are unable to bring them out, and as a result we become paralyzed. We live a life of Jahim. And Udwan, creating conflicts, and it is from Udv, which means creating dissensions, creating differences, and all these wars and conflicts in the world and the imbalances which we see will be covered under this term. Now we go to the next slide, and which covers both verses 140 and 141. Worship of the past leads to the waste of valuable time in our finite physical life on planet Earth. So important for us is that what we take from today's presentation is that become extremely conscious about our valuable time and not to waste on meaningless pursuits and meaningless thoughts. As far as hiding the reality about Ibrahim is concerned, it has been clarified by stating at another place that the Torah and Bible were sent down after Ibrahim. Thus, how can he be Jewish or Christian? And we know that there is a lot of talk of Abraham Accord as well. And all this has nothing to do with the messenger Ibrahim. Actually, it is a blasphemy against the messenger of Ibrahim, who was right at the pinnacle of humanity, human eminence. This is such an open fact that it cannot be hidden even under 1,000 veils. Hence, what is the point of hiding a fact like this? The reprehensible habit of the Jews of hiding the truth has been referred to in volume 2 under verse 42. In any case, if despite this you insist that your forefathers were not like that, were like this, what difference does this make to the real issue? Whatever they were like, their deeds were for them, and your deeds are for you. You will not be questioned about what paths your forefathers used to tread and what kinds of deeds did they engage in. What you will be asked is what kinds of deeds you did. This is the essence of Deen, in which there is no room for any dispute. Now we go to the final slide of today's presentation, concluding remarks on the worship of the past, and this is in relation to verse 141. The fundamental principle which has been described in this verse has such a profound connection with the life and death of nations that, however many times it is reiterated, it is not sufficient. A nation which indulges in ancestral worship or worship of the past cannot advance even one step on the highway of life. There is continuity in the life of a dynamic nation, and history is the name of this very process of continuity. Hence, the question of being cut off from its history does not even arise for this nation. The importance of history has been portrayed in volume 2 under verse 40. But a connection with history is one thing, and worship of the past is something else. So we have to get our perspective right as far as history is concerned. We should learn a lesson from the past, but not delve into it and start taking pride in something which then affects our own psyche as far as our own life is concerned. Worship of the past is another name for ancestral worship. Details about the destructions caused by the following of forefathers have been described in volume 1 under these verses. The Quran repeatedly presents these kinds of verses so that a nation does not invent ways to avoid the struggle of life by becoming engrossed in the trap of worship of the past. During the era of the sending down of the Quran, there was a need to remind the Jews about the devastations caused by worship of the past. But we consider that the application of these verses is on us. In fact, there is a very intense application to our own selves. That is why it is absolutely imperative that we analyze what is our position by reflecting on these verses. With that, we come to the end. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts, and sharing helps us to develop ourselves as well. We shouldn't keep it to ourselves. There might be out there many people who may be exposed to the message of the Quran and might benefit. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.